Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Monday, March 25th Maplewood City Council workshop. City Manager Coleman, would you do our roll call, please?
Absolutely, Mayor. Councilmember Neblett.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Judeman.
Here.
And Councilmember Knudsen.
Here.
And Mayor Abrams.
Here.
Thank you.
We have no, let's see, a pretty full agenda tonight, and we have a lot of people in uniform here ready to present to us. So is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Juneman, seconded by Neblett. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. We have no unfinished business. So we are going to move right to the Public Safety Department update. Chief Nadeau, are you going to start us off tonight?
Yes, I am, Mayor.
Okay.
Mayor, members of the council, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. A couple of months ago, the city council asked about the strategic plan for the police department. The fire department also has a new strategic plan this year, and so they wanted some information on that. And I also thought it would be a great time to be able to update the council on some of the public safety initiatives that we are undertaking as a public safety department. So I am going to cover that first part of it, which is the public safety piece of it. We then have two sergeants from the police department who are instrumental in working with line staff, detectives, people from every division of the police department, as well as some of our community members and council members on the strategic plan. So they'll present the police department strategic plan. There'll be a review of the fire department strategic plan, again, this being their first strategic plan since they've been a fire department, at least the first yearly strategic plan, I should say, and that'll be covered today by our two fire chiefs. So just as a little bit of a historical perspective, the police department and the fire department, as we talk about public safety, really have a rich working history. And so when I came into this position, we were building on dozens of years of collaboration. So it goes back as far as the police paramedic program, where the police officers used to be the paramedics here in Maplewood. The fire department would respond to emergencies and help with the transport, but the police officers were the paramedics. We then consolidated into Maplewood Fire, and since that time, we've continued to change public safety in Maplewood. We've got an excellent fire department that now administers our EMS services and does advanced life support and other services for our community. But there's also other collaborations, like the Ramsey County SWAT team. So we have officers that are on this collaborative SWAT team who are assisted by now 3 SWAT paramedics from Maplewood Fire. Our paramedics having the most advanced life-saving skills in the county, making sure that if people are injured in any of these things that could happen in our communities, that we've got people that are highly trained that work alongside of our police officers in those very dangerous situations. So one of the things that we saw a couple of years ago when I came was that there really could be more collaboration with public safety and our strategic partners, whether those be other departments in the city, whether those be community groups or civic groups, religious groups. So one of the things that we've been focusing on over the course of the last year is outreach and prevention. So we're out really trying to do a better job of outreaching to our community. We have an increasingly diverse community in Maplewood. We want to make sure that we are providing that service, that education, and that outreach to all of the different members of our community. So that outreach has taken a lot of different forms. Sometimes it's at a school setting where we're working with the children of our community, talking to them about policing and about firefighting and about safety and about ways that they can be safer in our community. Sometimes that collaboration has been training. So I'm going to touch a little bit on training and how we're doing that in public safety in ways that make it more cost-effective and more efficient for our police and firefighters. Another thing that we've been working on is fitness and wellness. As those who have read the 21st Century Policing Report have seen, wellness is one of the initiatives that is really stressed. It's the 7th pillar. And so they talk about, for our police officers and our firefighters to be out serving their community, they really need to be at their best. And so part of that has been mental health. And then through that collaboration as well, making sure that we were able to improve our EMS by including the police. And so In this community, something kind of unique happened historically. So we used to have the highest trained police officers in the metro area in paramedics, but after the paramedic program switched over to the fire department, our police officers were no longer getting training in EMS. And so through the collaboration with the fire department, we've changed that as well. So with public safety outreach, in the last year, we went from probably a couple of dozen hours to over 1,000 hours of community outreach, and we started doing it as public safety, so outreaching to our multicultural communities. So we had an event with our Karen community, we had several events with our Hmong community, we had events with our African American community and some of our more poor and diverse apartment communities. So really making sure that we are out there making these connections, particularly in some of these communities that have been difficult for us to reach in the past. This year, we've kicked off what we call the Senior Roadshow. So we're going to senior assisted facilities, we're going to nursing homes, again as public safety so that our fire department can talk about fall prevention, and they can talk about fire safety, and they can talk about the keys to life and how they can warehouse information so that when first responders come to their home, they've got the information that they need. The police officers are going with them and talking about elder abuse and talking about vulnerable adult issues and really, again, kind of stressing that collaboration in public safety so that the fire department isn't setting up a bunch of events and then going, and then the police department weeks or months later is setting up its own events, really combining to leverage that support. We're doing a lot with teaching life-saving skills to our community. So we've had several saves in the last year, which have involved community members. One of them was at our YMCA, where we had members of our community that witnessed a person go down. They started that immediate response from EMS, and then they took part in helping to do CPR and assist police and later paramedics that showed up. We had a similar event at one of our middle schools where middle school staff had a person that arrested. They started that EMS system. Then they started compressions, and luckily were able to bring a teenager back in a way that allowed her to have a full and complete life and a full recovery after that. Again, that outreach to and supporting our youth is a big part of what we're doing. We know that we've got a fantastic school system. We've got good access to our kids, and so whether we're going in as fire to talk to them about fire safety and to talk to them about all of the things they need to be safe from a fire perspective or a police perspective, that's been an emphasis as well. So a couple of examples for those who haven't been at some of these events. Some of the things that we've done have been charitable. So we've got the Battle of the Badges blood drive. We did that last year. It was police versus fire. Even though we're public safety, we like to be a little competitive from time to time. And so each police person that donated could designate whether they were donating for the police or for the fire. And the fire department won, I believe, by 2 pints last year. And so the competition is going to be fierce this year. We're really trying to get out as public safety and make sure that people understand the value of giving blood. We had a lot of our folks that donated their time and, more importantly, came and gave blood. Great ability to connect with our community. Last year, we partnered with the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office and our Park and Rec Department, assisted by our Public Works Department, which brought down garbage cans and picnic tables and other things, and we had a great event with our caring community. So whether it was Park and Rec playing some games with kids, whether it was public safety officials being able to connect with folks from that community and really explain who we were and the ways that we could serve them in Maplewood, another great outreach event. Some more examples include National Night Out, where we probably have our biggest one night in the community. We have police officers, we have firefighters, we have council members and others that go out and really stress that safety message, but it's also a great opportunity for us to have our neighbors start to meet each other and to talk with each other. And with all of the folks that move into our neighborhoods, we want to make sure that people feel secure, they know who their neighbors are, what might be unusual, kind of that type of thing. We also did our first helmet and bicycle giveaway. So in Columbia Heights, the city that I came from, we were able to find about 20 bicycles every year that were serviceable from the ones that we had impounded because they had been abandoned and called into the police. So last year we had our officers here in Maplewood work with staff in the fire department. We found about 50 bicycles that were serviceable that we fixed up, kind of did a quick tune-up on and made sure that the brakes worked and everything was safe and they were lubricated and all of that stuff. Then we went to our schools and we worked with our social workers and said, who are 50 kids that would really be able to utilize the bicycle for the summer? The fire department, working with Regions, was also able to get helmets donated, and they have people that are trained to fit helmets. And so not only did we get 50 bicycles into the hands of some of our kids that could really use a bicycle before the summer started, we made sure that they were safe while they were riding them with a custom-fitted helmet. We have been a few times to the Al Salam Mosque now. I think that it's great that we started that shortly after I got here to make sure that they knew that we wanted to partner with them. This isn't the only example of our outreaching to the faith community. It's certainly not just the Muslim faith community, but there had been some incidents as close to home as Bloomington, Minnesota, where there was some hate crimes that were being perpetrated. We wanted to make sure that they understood that we stood in partnership with them and that type of activity would not be tolerated. I'm very happy that we did that meet and greet and that relationship building prior to an unfortunate act of vandalism last year, and that we have continued that partnership in a way that's been meaningful for our community and for them, and that they understand that they're safe here in our community. We tried some events called, that one was Kids, Cuts, and Cops. So Sergeant Steiner, who's pictured there, was actually at a coffee with a cop at another location, and the gentleman who came in, who owns the Final Cut Barbershop in Maplewood Mall, was talking to him about some of the different things that he was doing in the community, and we decided that, this would be a great partnership for the police department and the community to be able to partner with a local business, and they went into an apartment community. I think this was just a couple weeks before school started, and made sure that all the kids got haircuts, and we had an opportunity, again, to just continue to build those relationships. So to touch just a little bit on public safety training, again, I had talked about police being the highest qualified medical responders, going down to the point where they really didn't have any certification or training at all. Typically, to get certified for first responder, it's a 1-week, 40-hour course. Multiply that by 54 police officers, and that ends up being a lot of training. But our fire staff, working under direction from Regions, was also able to assist us in that regard. They provided us with the training. Some of it was online, some of it was in person, but we were able to get about half of our police department, I think at this point, has gone through this training, and will now continue to be training with our paramedic and fire staff to make sure that they have that level of training, so that if they come across an accident scene, they can do more than just hope that the fire medics get there quickly. They can actually do things that are going to help to save lives. And I think that we've already had some examples of our officers out in the field having that level of training that they should have. Again, we were able to do this in a way working within our city that saved us tens of thousands of dollars and a lot of staff time, just because of the assets that we have in the city that we're working together. Similarly, our police trainers continue to work with our paramedic staff on things like active shooter training, so that if we end up going into some sort of an active shooter training, we can make sure that we get our medical responders in there as quickly as possible. Other things that we're doing include public safety wellness, so whether it's the mental health check-in program, or we're trying to make sure that our police and our firefighters have all of the resources that they have to deal with things like PTSD or functional fitness, where we now have trainers in the police department that are certified in CrossFit and Cooper standards, where they can help our police and our firefighters, so that we can try and do things like get away from soft tissue injuries and that type of thing. One of the things that we're excited about and that we're working on right now is what we call our Police Community Paramedic Outreach Program. This is affecting those with mental health issues. We decided to start this about maybe the last quarter of last year. Right now, we have had 6 people that we have assisted through our pilot program. So essentially, in our area, in Ramsey County and in other places in the state, there just is not adequate resources for those that have serious and persistent mental health issues. So the county does have some resources that will respond in a crisis, but then a lot of people that have these health issues are just kind of left to kind of be on their own. There isn't a lot of support from the state or the county. And so our police officers who have received special training are now partnering with our community paramedics, and we're going to the homes of people that are kind of in that high-risk category where they're continually accessing emergency services to treat mental health issues and some other things. They're then working with social workers at the county level. They're working with other people just to make sure that our folks in our city have some extra resources. And so far, we've seen a couple of successes, and we're excited about the future of that program. We're not out there trying to provide mental health counseling. We're just there to make sure that folks are getting connected to resources so they can be more successful as they're in their community. All right, with that, we are to the Police Department Strategic Plan, and I will turn it over to Sergeants Buzak and Beardeman.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Madam Mayor, Council, first of all, thank you for giving us the opportunity to come in front of you today. We're very excited about the strategic plan and excited to share that with you today. Again, I'm Sergeant Brian Beardman with Maplewood Police. To my right is Sergeant Dan Buzak. And we'll be just touching some highlights on the 2019 strategic plan. Obviously, it's much more thorough than what we're giving you tonight, but we'll hit some highlights. As you know, in 2018 really marked the first year that we implemented the strategic plan. Chief Nadeau came in, kind of looked at how we were doing things in the department and realized that there's different ways in which we can focus and really laser focus our goals and objectives throughout the department, make ourselves much more streamlined. So that's what really kicked off in 2018, the strategic plan. You might ask how the strategic plan is created. We gathered last year one cop from each crew in each section of the department. We then met several times at the end of the year. Those officers would then go back, speak with other officers of the department, so really everybody was involved. And then throughout several meetings, the plan was developed. So the evolution of the strategic plan from 2018 to 2019. In 2018, really, Chief Nadeau led the charge in the strategic plan. He was really the facilitator of it. This year, I think he really wanted the officers to have more input on it. So he made myself and Sergeant Dan Buzak the facilitators, and we sat together and we really wanted to figure out what we were missing in the 2018 plan and what we could add to the 2019 plan. And the biggest thing was that cops are very good at figuring out what we want and what we need to do, but what we were missing was stakeholders, right? And so we went and met with some of the stakeholders, the school district, the mayor. We reached out to city council, the police advisory committee, business leaders, and other city departments. And we did the same method. We'd send officers out, they would speak with them. We'd gather input from the citizens and from these different stakeholders as to what they thought their police department should be doing. And then we brought that back to the committee and tried to plan the goal around that. So these are the 6 pillars, as I call them, or strategies of the 2019 strategic plan. The strategies did not change, these 6 from 2018 to 2019, but what changed was the action status or action items within each of those pillars. So number 1 is probably problem-oriented policing. Number 2, community-oriented policing. And then communication, accountability, training, equipment, and wellness. And we'll spend the next couple of minutes just kind of touching the highlights and some of the things that has changed on those. So number 1, problem-oriented policing. This is a really big initiative for us. In the past, each officer in each specialty unit, street crimes unit, and all these different units were kind of going out doing their own thing and what they thought was important for fighting crime and reducing crime. So what strategy 1 really does is it focuses all those units together and gathers intel and information. So we'll gather that information from our crime analysis. Then we create what we call the weekly hotspot. And that's going to show us within that given week the places in the city that really we need to focus our efforts on and where the crime is kind of emerging and try to nip that as quick as possible. And how do we do that? We utilize problem-solving models like a SARA model, different ways of scan and analysis of what's creating these hotspots. And then we're working with businesses or working with apartment complex owners to try to solve these problems. The one thing that's really unique is the roll call, the e-roll call. That's where everything kind of comes together. It's really a living document. And so what's great about that is that street crimes unit, investigative unit, retail crime unit, the police officers can all go into there, and as they're updating things and following up with business owners, that's really a living document. It continues to update. So other officers all have intel on what's going on throughout the day. So the night shift knows what the day shift's doing, knows what the investigative unit's doing. So that's been very useful. So this one we're all very excited about, the community partnerships. In the past, Maplewood's always done well with community-oriented events, but really we've really increased that tenfold now with Chief Nadeau coming in. In 2018 and in 2019, we've mandated all officers throughout the year do 12 hours of community outreach annually. In the past, it was maybe several officers doing a ton of the outreach. Now we really expect every officer to get involved, and they've just absolutely loved it because as you can see in 2018, we mandated 12 hours, the average was 20. And there's some officers with well beyond 20, so they really caught on to it, they really loved it, and they really enjoyed it, and we appreciate that. What the difference between 20 and 18 and 2019 really was really who we're trying to reach out to. We're much more focused now on trying to reach out to diverse communities and the big youth initiative, to try to reach out to the youth in diverse communities. So as you can see, the bottom left picture, that's fishing with a cop. As the chief mentioned earlier, there was several things at the mosque and also with the caring community. And so we're going to continue to do that and continue to be much more focused on reaching out to those communities. And with that, I'll turn the strategies 3, 4, 5, and 6 over to Sergeant Dan Buzek.
All right. So strategy 3, the focus of strategy 3 is primarily communication. In almost any organization or agency, oftentimes communication is a spot that is lacking. Sergeant Beardman already touched on the fact that we're heavily utilizing e-roll call so that every crew, every shift knows what one another is doing. As far as communicating as well, we've partnered with the communications, he left, department this year, and we're really trying to be more deliberate on getting positive messages out to members of the community. Maybe not just so focused on a crime that occurred or helping us identify a suspect, but making the community as a whole aware of the good things that we're doing and the positive things that are occurring in our city. So that's where this one changed from 2018, is a stronger focus on that, getting that positive message out there. And a lot of that too was what we heard when we met with our stakeholders, is that came up frequently, is getting that positive message out. Another thing that we've been doing and is getting increasingly more and more is ensuring that we're recognizing the good work that all of our employees are doing. Too often, it's expected, you maybe don't give the recognition, and it's important that we do so. So we're very deliberate about finding the good things that people are doing and recognizing it, whether it's just through an email, whether it's through an employee recognition letter. In our report room, we have a little whiteboard that's called the Moments of Merit board, where a fellow officer or a sergeant or whoever who's recognized something good can just write a quick little note on the whiteboard showing their appreciation. And those little things do make a big impact, and people really appreciate it. Another aspect of the communication is the chief has been really good about updating the whole department. They used to start out being every couple of weeks when he was newer, and then it's evolved to, we don't necessarily need that every 2 weeks, because really there isn't something that needs to be talked about. So now they're coming out more on an as-needed basis, but still much more frequently than they historically had. And it's good because it quells a lot of rumors, because rumors can pop up and people, did you hear this, did you hear that? So when we're getting the messaging out there, getting the truth out there, that's good for everybody. Additionally, on a quarterly basis, the chief meets in person with every crew and again presents what's going on in the department, what we're doing, and they all have an opportunity to ask questions directly. Again, another way just to share information and keep those rumors to a minimum. Strategy 4 is all about police accountability. So this is, again, a carryover from the 2018 strategic plan. And the highlights of this one are, when we talk about we have this strategic plan, and that's all great, but are you following that plan? Are you doing what you said you were going to do? So on a quarterly basis, that committee that developed that plan meets, goes over all of our action steps, and we give ourselves a grade as to how we're doing to date. That first meeting is actually going to be coming up on April 2nd. So we'll find out how we've done so far in this first quarter for 2019. So that's really good. in keeping us on task and ensure that we're doing what we said we were going to do. We're also additionally at our monthly staff meetings where the sergeants and up are in attendance. We're tracking performance measures of our officers. That's something we hadn't done in the past. And so now every quarter, we're looking at statistics as far as reports taken, traffic stops, how many calls they responded to, arrests, citations. And that's been really good at identifying if there might be a problem before it becomes a major problem, so we can address these things, these shortcomings as soon as we see them, and not wait till maybe the end of the year when you're having that evaluation and say, what were you doing all year? We now see those things now. The officers know that we do this, so their standards, in my opinion, have come up. Additionally, we're tracking our community outreach hours. We've already alluded to the fact that we require 12, but everyone far exceeded those. Strategy 5, staffing, training, and equipment. First of all, thank you to the council for 2 additional officers for 2019. That's a good thing. The training priorities that we have established for 2018, we knew that those were going to take a few years to implement. We're in the middle of that now. Things that we are heavily focused on have already been talked about a little bit, but the crisis intervention training, we're ensuring that all of our officers are trained in a 40-hour crisis intervention training, so they have much better tools in dealing with the mentally ill in persons in a state of crisis. Additionally, one of our top training priorities is the EMR, or the first responder training. Additional equipment that we benefited from were last year we got a wonderful new workout facility, which is going to lead into strategy 6, which we're about to go to, and I'll just jump to it now as I'm already talking about it. Department wellness, and when we talk about wellness, again, it's not just a physical thing here. We're concerned about our officers' physical well-being, their mental well-being as well. So we do have a mental health program within the police department, part of our policy where officers have the ability to meet with a mental health professional. And we're really pushing to get greater involvement in the city's wellness program. The police department historically for whatever reason, has always been one of the lower performers when it comes to participation in the city's wellness program. But we have over the past several years, we're getting much better at that. We're getting more people to participate in it and take more effort in having a greater concern for their health. So I think that's a really good thing. Our fitness center is continuing to improve, and the supervisors I know are very good about promoting that and ensuring that whenever possible, that officers are utilizing that and taking advantage of that facility that's been provided to them. And with that, I'll turn it over to the fire department.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Appreciate being here. So Chief Monder and I kind of split it up tonight a little bit. I'll go over some of the beginning stuff, and Chief Monder will cover more of the strategic plan. Mayor and Council, some of you may or may not remember that this is actually the third strategic plan that the fire department has put together. The first one was back in 2002, but that was more gauged towards the staffing needs that we had at the time with the reduction we had in the number of our daytime paid per call people. We had brought someone in and we put a strategic plan of where we'd be moving in the forward. 2010, we kind of were in the same situation. It was more about what our needs are, where are we looking, and where are we going to be in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. And again, as you're well aware of, it added some staffing. We went to our part-time then in 2010, and actually that was when we decided it made good sense to close a couple of our stations. Today, however, it's a different situation that we have. Our strategic plan that we put together it really is taking our pillars and unfolding them into yours. It's very important that your strategic plan follows our strategic plan, and our strategic plan follows yours. And as we met together to do that, we were able to really take a look at where everything fell in line and put those together. Our strategic group was actually made up of all the officers within the department, one firefighter from each of the crews. We had a union representative there, and we also had our administrative assistant there, Shang. Shang played a really important role in doing that as we talked and we put things on the board and threw things at the wall to see what stick. She really had some good insight on her diversity and how some of this would work in and things that we should maybe look at doing different that would really help in diversity of our community that we have. And that was one of our main goals we said we needed to do. We needed to look at what the future, not only of the fire department looked like, but what the community was looking at. As we all well know, it's aging, we're getting very, very more diverse, and so it was really important that our strategic plan fit into all of those guidelines as we did that. And again, Chief Monder will talk a little bit more about that. Did I get it? Oh, yeah. So what we did is we developed a strategic plan. We went through the administrative approvals to take a look at that. We did quite a few drafts of it, and then we went into the implementation. One of the things that we did is our mission statement for the fire department was put together in 1998. It was put together at the time we merged all three of the independent fire departments together. And at that time, it was a great mission statement. It was quite wordy, quite lengthy, and as we looked at it when we were meeting here, it did not fit anywhere where we were today. And so we really thought it was important that we put together a new mission statement. And so really, in what really this points out is the fact is that we believe that we need to meet the needs of the communities in all aspects of it. So the Maplewood Fire Department exists to serve the community needs. We're committed to enhancing the quality of life through innovative community risk reduction and emergency response. And those were the key things, is community risk reduction is both in medical issues, as we mentioned, as the PD had mentioned, regarding mental health, as the chief mentioned, all the different community outreaches that we go to are all part of that. And so this is our new mission statement that we have created. Okay, there it is. We also needed a new vision statement at the same time. And believe it or not, this took quite a few reviews as well as to get our vision statement done. And again, as you can read and see, is that the Maplewood Fire Department aims to be recognized as an innovative leader, an industrial leader, an employee of choice. We are accomplished by this by hiring and developing exceptional people, ensuring financial responsibility, and being an inclusive member of the community, which embodies our core values. And again, we really believed and understood the need that we needed to have a new vision that met with the times that we are facing. Our organizational values, and these are the 5 items that we felt were very, very important to the organization. We did quite a bit of time with this too, that each one had different ideas and viewpoints of what it should be. And as a whole, the organization then agreed, and we sent this out to everyone, that these would be our organizational values: integrity, teamwork, professionalism, accountability, and excellence. And each of those little splurb that goes along with them, act with honor. All of these items were put together by the firefighters on the committee and then sent out to the actual whole department for their input, so that this was a team, a total team event. The other thing that we never had before that we really thought would be important is we needed a motto. As you can see, years ago we had one that says neighbors helping neighbors. And again, that was the days that you came from your home and you lived with your neighbors, and we were a paid per call fire department, and everybody was the most like within the community. Today, as you well know, we're a full-time department and they live almost anywhere in the metro area. So we really needed to have a new change in that motto, and we really believed it was service before self. And we had a couple of renditions and a few things added, but at the end of the day, this is what the department felt very strongly in, is what our motto would be, and that is service before self. I'll let Chief Mondor take it from here. Thank you.
Mayor and council, thanks again for having us tonight. So we really, 2018 was a large shift for the fire department. There was a lot of change in the organization. So we wanted to be thoughtful about how we were putting together this plan. That's why we started with rebranding our mission, vision, and values and motto. And then that committee came together again to create the 2019 strategic plan. As you'll notice, and Chief Lucan mentioned, every element of our plan ties to the city's strategic plan, and those initiatives are bracketed in parentheses. There was several hours of work, into the 60s or 70s of hours of work that went into this plan, and a lot of dedication from staff, and I can't thank our staff enough for being truly engaged in this process. And you'll see the five strategies: effective emergency response, employer of choice, tell our story, reduce risk and prevent harm, and financial responsibility and sustainability. Strategy 1, effective emergency response, which relates to operational effectiveness. We really wanted to take a look at our data and how we're utilizing our data, specifically around response times and travel times. And if you remember, that ties back to some of the recommendations from the Fitch study. So we want to make sure that we're continuing to refer back to that study to make sure that we're, again, doing the things that we said that we were going to do. We also focus on allocating resources around community risk reduction or reducing repeat utilization. So that, from an EMS standpoint, means a customer that calls several times. So we have people that can call 20, 30 times in a year. That's not uncommon. On the fire side, it's allocating resources to focus on false alarms so that we're not sending half of our resources to something that 99% of the time is not a true emergency. We evaluate our deployment, and that changes based on the demand. So we're continually looking at how are we staffing our resources, where are we placing them, at what time of day as it relates to what's going on in the community. We focus on staff health and wellness and safety, but arguably outside of the personnel safety, one of the key parts of all the action items in this strategy is that tying back to the Fitch study. We invested a lot of resources and time in that study, and we want to make sure that we're being respectful of those recommendations. Employer of choice, this focuses primarily on continuing training and education opportunities for our staff, and we want to be the leader in fire and EMS. We want to be the place to work in the metro area. And we're trying to reemphasize enhancing opportunities for our staff to further their education, to be better trained in the community, and also looking at succession planning so that we're looking at trying to create an agency that has depth of 3, or we call it 3 deep, within every position in the organization, so that if Chief Lucan is hurt and I'm on vacation and Chief Conway's gone, that we have several people from the bench that can step up and fill those various roles within the department. We're like the police department, we're working together on several health and wellness initiatives, the mental health check-in program, working with the police department to utilize their peer fitness trainers to help the physical well-being of our staff. And there's certainly a lot more collaboration that's going on between both the police and fire department. We've also put more emphasis on measuring employee satisfaction. The Chief Lucan and I have had employee one-on-ones with every employee in 2018, and that's a practice we're going to continue at least every other year. Chief Nadeau has had what we call donuts with the director, where he met with each shift. In 2019, we'll include implementing a employee engagement survey so that we're engaging our staff's engagement through the utilization of a survey. Historically, the fire department has done a average to poor job in telling our story. We'd like to do our job, and don't, a lot of firefighters don't really want that recognition, specifically around media or social media. We have made great improvements with the help of Mr. Sheeran and his team in how we brand and how we communicate, both internally and externally. In 2019, we will establish a formal internal and external communications plan and have already executed a social media plan to be more thoughtful about how we're communicating with the public. The Public Safety Department now has one Facebook. We're working on merging our Twitter. So we're just really trying to do more together and highlight the positive things that we're doing in the community. One of my favorite portions of the plan is around community risk reduction, so reducing risk and preventing harm in the community. The fire service historically has done a great job of trying to put ourselves out of business through fire sprinklers, community education, code enforcement. We've taken a similar approach on the EMS side, and I would say that we're industry leaders in our community risk reduction efforts. We had a published paper on our falls research in 2018. We engaged in a pilot with the Ramsey County Care Center and a cooperative in 2018 to help with their discharges, so people that were at the nursing home could safely transition to home with our community paramedics helping bridge that gap. As Chief Nadeau mentioned, we're working on the mental health outreach program as well with our police department, which is really an approach that I haven't seen in the country as to how we handle people that are falling through the cracks, essentially. Financial responsibility and sustainability. We're continuing to evaluate processes to make sure that we're being efficient with our resources. A lot of this focuses around some of our medical purchases, so making sure that we're managing inventory and not wasting things that regularly expire. We're looking at logistics management. We implemented a tracking software for all of our durable equipment and fleet in early 2019, which is helping our staff be more efficient in their truck checks and identifying things before they become larger problems. We also, as part of our strategic plan review and our staff meetings, we're trying to get staff more engaged in the budget and what is an operating budget and what are capital expenses and where are we spending these resources, so that they have a deeper understanding when it comes to ask for more, that we're being thoughtful about how we're allocating those resources. And then, as always, one of our pieces of this is to pursue mission-driven grant opportunities. So we don't want to just apply for any old grant, but if it fits within our mission, we want to be thoughtful to exercise all of those opportunities so that we can be good stewards of our resources. And with that, we would stand for any questions.
Thank you, everyone, for your presentations tonight. What an impressive presentation to the council. I cannot thank you enough. From my perspective, this really helps the council because this is really the roadmap that you are using for this year, and it helps us as decision makers. And I am just very impressed. It was a great presentation, and it's wonderful to see all the things that you are doing and how you're engaging in our community. Can I make one suggestion? Because I know that you are doing great things. In terms of your community engagement, if you could, Chief, Public Safety Director, I'm sorry, and Chief. If you could, when you have those engagement opportunities out there in the community, if you could let the council know. I know this last winter I went to a fraud and identity theft presentation by the police department over at the community center, and it really is fun as a council member to be able to see what's going on out there. I'd like to go to the senior, what do you call it? Not senior roundup, what did you call it? The senior roadshow. I think that would be really fun to see how our agencies are engaging in our community. And I'm sure the other council members What did I call senior roundup? I'm sorry.
That's a vision, yeah.
That's, yes, really.
Well,
We're equipping them all with lassos.
it's good that we can laugh up here. Well, see, okay. For those kinds of events, I know that the bigger ones, when we're over at the schools and, the hot dogs and all of that, but some of these other events, I think it would be great for us to actually see you all in action. And I think the other council members would enjoy learning about some of these things and actually participating. So if you could please work with Melinda and let us know, and that way you'll see us out there, because they're really fun events, and it's great to see how you're engaging so much with our community. So.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to those that took the time to put together a presentation tonight and present. We will definitely let you know. Would love to have you at some of these events and give you a little bit more of a hands-on experience about how we're trying to do great things in our community.
I think it'd be great for us as policymakers. So with that, I know we're running out of time, but is there anyone else who wanted to make any comments? Councilmember Juniman.
I think I'm cursed, or somebody's trying to tell me I shouldn't have run again, but this dang light doesn't want to engage. It's like, maybe if we ignore her, she won't say anything. Yeah, I know. I want to see you in 17 years, Brian. Anyway, or maybe not. I want to echo what the mayor said. It was a wonderful presentation by everyone. Thank you so much. And I think the greatest value, though, is the people who see this at home. People have a vision or an idea in their heads of what police and fire do, and it's fine because they feel safe, but it's much narrower than what you do. And so I think it's a wonderful thing for them to see and hear how well off we are, and we know it. I have to say, as our representative on the Ramsey County Dispatch Policy Committee, I repeatedly hear about the quality of our people in Maplewood. So you're noticed at even a different level. And so I want you to know that, and I want the people of the city to know that we are really, really, really lucky, and we appreciate everything you do. And this was a wonderful way to tell people. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Knudsen.
Thank you, Mayor. I had the privilege of spending a number of days and hours working with an EMS task force in the city. I've been in healthcare for 35, 40 years, and I had never been so impressed with the foresight and the stewardship of the departments that I met with. Currently, I'm involved in senior care, so I'm a little worried about the roundup, but but I'll be okay. What I'm thinking of is the community paramedic program. I actually am active in that program and been a participant in your leadership in engaging the community is really what Medicare is following now. They just announced that Medicare benefits are being called supplemental benefits. They're trying to figure out that care in the community is better than care in an institution. So when you look at what you're describing as the community paramedic program, the Falls program, the outreach, it's impressive. And I think from an industry point of view, healthcare industry, the leadership that this community is showing is marvelous. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Neblett.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thank you. I feel privileged. I feel like I have insider information in the police department just because of the opportunity that I had to work with the PAC and the use of force group. But I'm just reminded of what good work you guys really, really do. And it's much appreciated. So just keep up the good work, and thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you all as well. I really appreciate this. I think this gives us good direction. The only thing I'd like to say to sort of meant with positive intent, to be sure, is that I think where the rubber meets the road with these strategies is what happens when nobody's looking. And it's every interaction with every resident. And whereas you as public safety professionals may have 10, 15, 20, 30 interactions a day, each resident only has a handful of hopefully, let's say at least on average, only has an average amount of, or a few interactions a year with public safety folks. So if that's a negative interaction, it sticks with people. And I think it's just, you know, I'm always impressed with what you all do. I'm always super impressed with what happens in those small moments, those moments that nobody really gets credit for, nobody makes a big deal out of. But those are the things that people talk about and share and becomes really your story within a city like Maplewood. So, and unfortunately, the opposite can be true when things don't go so hot. So just really keep in mind, I think, as an organization, this is something that, you know, what's routine for you guys is not routine for most people. And that what may not be a big deal to you might be a big deal to that person you're working with. And just keeping that level of empathy up, I can only imagine how challenging that is, but really would encourage you to keep doing it. So thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, everyone, very much. Thank you. We have one more agenda item, and that is the commission and board interviews. City Manager Coleman, do you want to explain?
I do.
We've got a couple of changes.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight, we will be interviewing candidates for 2 openings, one on the Environmental and Natural Resource Commission and one opening on the Housing and Economic Development Commission. Today, we had some cancellations. So applicant Jason DeMoe withdrew, and applicant Robert Breslin withdrew. So I know Joe is out there. It looks like we have another person waiting. So I'm going to take on the role of host and greeter. So after you get started, I will make sure that I'm making sure everyone comes in and out as needed. You do have a ballot. You have questions that have been prepared for you, and you also have a ballot. And then when we break from here between the meeting, I will tally those ballots and let you know how that turns out. So
Thank
with
you,
that,
City
Mayor,
Manager.
I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, City Manager Coleman. Council members, you know how this goes. We did it the last time. Do you want to pick out a question? We're going to be doing the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission first. Councilmember Juniman.
I'd like number 2, please.
Okay. Councilmember Knutson. Number 4. Councilmember Niblett.
What's already been taken? I'm sorry.
2 and 4 have been
2
taken.
and 4. I'll take number 1.
And Councilmember Smith?
I'll take number 3.
And I'll take number 5.
So we're doing 3 on both?
We might as well while we're waiting for someone to, do you want us to do the same numbers for both?
Sure.
Is everyone fine with that?
And I
Yep.
only have to remember one number.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll do that. We'll do that. Mr. Gould? Yes. Do you want to step up to the podium, please? Welcome.
I got lots of red ones. Oh, there's a big one.
We have 5 questions for you, and we are going to split them up. The first question is going to come from Councilmember Niblett.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Gould, what do you feel you can bring to the ENR Commission? Interests, talents, life experience, et cetera?
Well, yeah, thanks for having me back. Appreciate
back.
round 2 here. And again, Joe Gould, 191 Larpenter Avenue East. I'm a political scientist, small business owner. I do government relations, policy research, and consulting. I'm also a teacher, part-time, adjunct faculty at the Finishing Trades Institute in Little Canada. And former city council member myself from my hometown area. Been in Maplewood 4 years now. Was on the district council in St. Paul when we lived there for 2 years. And just coming off of the Rice Larpenter Gateway Advisory Committee with the cities nearby that Maplewood, St. Paul, and Roseville were all part of. So looking for another volunteer opportunity. Been kind of watching and learning Maplewood city business the last few years. And, you know, I'm a bit of an outdoorsman. I like to hunt and fish, so I care about our environment. My wife and I take weekly walks to Western Hills Park, the Gateway Trail, every week throughout the summer and fall. So definitely have an interest in the outdoors and Parks and Recreation. I was a member of my city council zoning committee and Parks and Recreation committee. So I am familiar with Green Steps initiatives, which I understand is part of the Environmental and Natural Resources Planning Commission. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me and my background. I also served, or I'm a graduate of the Blandon Foundation Community Leadership Program, and that was all about how to learn how to develop and sustain healthy communities, which the environment is obviously one.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman?
Thank you, Mayor. The ENR Commission focuses on issues related to the environment such as recycling, solid waste, stormwater management, wetlands, energy, and others. Please share your experiences in working with one of these issues or other similar issues related to the environment.
Sure. My wife and I are proud organics advocates. We compost, we recycle on average 5 times the amount that we throw away each week. And so I take a weekly trip to the compost dumpster myself to either Frank and Sims or further down Larpenter, take a left, and they have one kind of by the animal shelter there too. And so, yep, definitely a strong proponent of recycling and organics, composting programs, and so I'd be happy to lend a hand in that regard.
With any luck, we're actually going to have an organics drop-off at the community center parking lot one of these days.
That'd be wonderful.
Councilmember Smith, number 3.
The city of Maplewood tries very hard to balance development and property rights with the protection of our natural resources. Where do you see your interest or concerns in the process of balancing those interests?
Yeah, sure. Well, working in politics and government, I'm no stranger to, finding compromise, which I think is a very important thing that gets left behind a little too often these days, unfortunately. And, I'm, fine being in the minority opinion. It really doesn't bother me. Usually at the end of the day, we're supporting the same overall goal or mission. And, that's what living in democracy is all about. So, yeah, definitely no stranger to working on issues where we're trying to find middle ground and working with diverse opinions.
Okay. Councilmember Knudsen, number 4.
Joe, what types of environmental policies or practices has the city of Maplewood put into place that you feel have made a positive impact in the city?
Yeah, so I'm very happy with the recycling program that we have right now. The weekly pickup of recyclable all-in-one containers, I think, is a huge incentive for people to recycle. Just having that availability to have someone come pick up your recycling once a week and having it able to be put into one container, I think, is a huge step in the right direction that Maplewood has taken, and definitely a participant in that. Like I said earlier, familiar with the Green Steps initiatives that I understand Maplewood was a award winner last year for reaching level 5, which is the top ranking that we can get. So been following that, been proud of the work the city's done on recycling and the Green Steps initiatives.
And the last question, what 2 environmental issues do you feel the ENR Commission should address for the city of Maplewood?
Yeah, so I think whatever we can do to combat climate change, it's happening, it's real. I think there's a lot of things that we can do as far as putting together different plans or assessments. Just supporting the Nature Center in their mission and goals, I think, is another way that the commission can be helpful. Spring cleanup, keep that going. I've participated in that myself, and education programs, I think, is something that could be further developed in partnership with the Nature Center and the commission.
Thank you. What's going to happen is that we will, at the by the end of our workshop, we'll submit our ballots to City Manager Coleman, and she will tally them, and they will be announced at our council meeting. You can certainly, you're welcome to stay outside if you'd like. Otherwise, you can certainly, you'll get a call tomorrow by city staff.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council members, the Housing and Economic Development Commission questions are on the back of the questions for the ENR. We're waiting for Scott Creer is our first. Oh,
It's just hard to find a good host. All right, before the next meeting, we have to make somebody straighten that clock. It drives me crazy.
good evening. Welcome to our workshop. We have 5 questions for you. Each council member has 1 question. The first one is Councilmember Neblett. Well, first, do you want to state your name, please?
My name is Scott Creer.
Welcome. Councilmember Neblett.
What do you feel you can bring to the Housing and Economic Development Commission, including training, skills, experience, et cetera?
Okay. Well, professionally, for the last 10 years, I've been responsible for the multifamily housing program at the university. This program, we're over 870 apartments in over 80 buildings with over 640,000 square feet of residential space. We have over 90 acres of property, 2 community centers, and 2 childcare programs within that. I'm responsible for everything in that program, from the individual resident leasing and rent collection, all the way to the 10-year capital infrastructure plan. And in managing that 10-year capital plan, I ensure balance when allocating funds for the facilities needs. I provide the financial analysis of individual projects and the entire plan to ensure program goals are met. Over the last 10 years, I've been part of several different projects, including over $10 million in streets and parking replacement projects, soil contamination remediation, $2.5 million for utility system upgrades, as well as apartment renovations, playgrounds, basketball court replacements. I've done pretty much all of those projects, anything that has to do with residentials. I also oversee our off-campus listing service. I am responsible for the market analysis for that. As that work makes me the university's expert on the off-campus market, I'm asked to sit on various committees, including committees where I'm engaged with community members, the police department, regulatory services, as well as local business associations. I'm familiar with landlord, tenant, and fair housing issues. I have experience working with engineering and codes departments, environmental health and safety, and many other stakeholders who I've worked with over the years. And finally, on the professional side, because my professional career has been in the public sector, I understand the importance of transparency and communication in relation to decision-making. Personally, what I bring different to the table is my wife and I, we purchased our home in foreclosure 7 years ago in South Maplewood, almost in Newport. We have a well and septic. We're RE40 zone property versus normal residential property. And our closest retail is actually in Woodbury. And I share this information because I feel it shows that I might bring a slightly different viewpoint to what might be discussed. So,
Okay. Question number 2, Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you. All I can say is if you do that all day long and you want to do this at night too, okay. This is almost ridiculous, but we'll ask it anyway. What is the extent of your knowledge in public funding opportunities, grants, revolving loan programs, and other funding methods for assisting businesses?
So my knowledge with loan programs for assisting businesses is actually quite minimal. Being in the public sector, for the most part, we don't really apply for those types of loans. So, but I do understand they exist and how they work, and that grant opportunities are always available depending on targeted businesses, certainly. as well as some other things. But for the most part, to be honest, I don't know much about the actual loan processes. I have not been through it. So,
Lord knows you might have been through some others, however.
correct, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
How can the city of Maplewood work better to assist existing businesses, attract new businesses, and market the city as a premier business location, in your perspective?
Oh, geez, that's kind of a really large question, I think. It would be so business specific. I mean, there's the generalities of, tax incentives and all sorts of things that can lure businesses. But it depends on what kind of businesses you want to lure, and it really depends on your residents and what you want to engage. And so without the specificity, I hesitate in really saying anything generality just for the sake of saying anything in generalities. I think it'd be better just to engage. I mean, if like, for example, if the northeast quadrant of Maplewood is high in engineering degrees, then maybe you want to lure a business that brings engineering jobs to that area or that sector. And so for that, you would try to engage specifically those businesses through targeted business incentive programs to try to get that going. But again, without specificity, I don't dare say.
Thank you.
So.
Councilmember Knutson.
Are there any specific city of Maplewood, or any specific locations in Maplewood you'd like to see the city work proactively to encourage redevelopment? If so, where?
Wow, that's another big question. And so, to be honest, I'm not purview on the data to say where that would be. I would have to see travel patterns, the bus routes. Again, it would be targeted business depending on where you want to be. I mean, if you want retail, you're going to need space for parking. If you want grocery, you need access to public transit, transportation opportunities, central locations. And so there's a lot of information that, quite frankly, I don't have as I'm not part of the commission yet. And so without that information, again, I hesitate to say any one area of Maplewood needs business more than any other, or development for that matter. But
What do you see as a particular housing need in Maplewood? For example, more or less affordable housing, more or less multifamily housing?
I don't think anybody would argue that we shouldn't have affordable housing. I think affordable housing is a key to providing a well-diverse neighborhoods and providing resources for a diverse set of people in your neighborhoods. I think the focus on multifamily housing is excellent because I do believe families tend to build more communities around a playground than individuals would just in the street. And so I do think that would be advantageous to any community to have multifamily housing or more multifamily housing. But the question is, how do you do that sustainably? You certainly don't want to grow your multifamily housing so large that you're so dense that you're no longer multifamily friendly, where people don't want to raise their kids anymore in your neighborhood because it's all just brick solid buildings with 400 units in every building. I think there needs to strike a balance between kind of high density and low density residential versus RE. I mean, it's all in kind of that zoning plan that I'm sure the city has. So,
Thank you very much.
oh, thank you.
We will be voting tonight, and we'll announce it during our council meeting, and then staff, if you don't stay or if you can't stay, then staff will be calling people tomorrow.
Oh, okay, excellent,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to our Maplewood City Council workshop. Could you please tell us your name?
Sure. I'm Daryl Henshin. Good evening, everyone.
We have 5 questions for you tonight. Each council member has 1 question for you, and we're going to start with Councilmember Neblett.
Thank you, Mayor. Daryl, what do you feel you can bring to the Housing and Economic Development Commission in terms of training, skills, experience, et cetera?
Well, I think one of the things that caught my eye about this position was that it involved housing. I am an attorney. I've worked for the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency for the last almost 13 years. I initially represented them through the Attorney General's office, and I'm now in-house counsel. So that's sort of my niche in the world. Housing is my thing. Safe, affordable, decent housing is sort of what I do for a living. It is a passion. It's something I enjoy. So that certainly caught my attention. I think the other piece that I bring to it is sort of in my undergrad, I have an economic development emphasis. So one of my focuses at the Housing Finance Agency, in addition to the housing, but is sort of looking at the bigger picture, the bigger market, and really structuring the deal to fit the different communities and making sure it's a viable, good project. So I think that comes through not only with housing, but economic development in general. So I guess to overall answer your question, it's just, I think that piece of looking at a project and making sure it fits the needs of the community and making sure it is a viable project.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman.
This is kind of the other side, it's the business side. What is the extent of your knowledge in public funding, opportunities, grants, revolving loan programs, or other funding methods for assisting businesses?
Well, again, my focus is in housing, and I certainly deal with all of those tools specifically with that. I think when you put it specifically toward businesses, we do work with developers. They are business developers. Most of them do not only housing, but they do business developments. So in the grand scheme of things, I look at the lending picture. We certainly have grant programs. We work through the federal programs also to make sure those funding, all that funding is available. My main focus, again, is the multifamily residential piece of it, but that's usually a piece of a much bigger project, and that only involves the state. But obviously, different state agencies, there's also a federal component normally in that many times, be it housing tax credits or different grant programs. And also local. A lot of times we deal with rental assistance. And so when we deal with those developers and look at the big piece, I think all those tools are in place. I personally handle the grants management. So we deal with the grant side, and we have several different grant programs that we use. Obviously, the lending piece is our biggest focus. But I think the other piece of that too that I look at is we've started some revolving loan programs also with some of the bigger developers to actually give the money and have them sort of revolve it and keep coming back and keep reusing it to get the most use out of it in a timely and efficient manner. So, well, again, the emphasis is certainly housing. It is looking at the big picture, and there are certainly, commercial and business economic developments components of it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. How can the city of Maplewood work to better assist existing businesses, attract new businesses, and market the city as a premier business location?
That's a big question. I think one of the things that I look at is sort of how a city markets itself. I know Maplewood is, I think, in my mind, very unique in the fact that just sort of the boundaries make it sometimes people don't realize if they're in Maplewood or a different community, and so I think it's important for them to sort of focus on their strengths. When I look at the city, people tend to focus on a lot of the retail areas, say the Maplewood Mall, that comes up a lot. So I think to answer your question, to focus on the specific businesses, I think the city just has to make it known what they can offer and what's out there and try to recruit businesses that fit that need. Certainly I know retail's been somewhat difficult in certain aspects around the country, and so it's finding not only businesses that are willing to come in, but businesses that have a long-term maybe commitment and long-term can adapt to changing circumstances. And so that's certainly not an easy task, but I think it's keeping itself open and marketing itself to let businesses know what it can offer, what kind of financial incentives there are, and just the general opportunities that are in the area.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Knudsen.
Are there any specific locations in Maplewood you would like to see the city work proactively to encourage redevelopment? And if so, where are they?
Well, I have to be honest, I guess the area that I'm at most is probably the White Bear Avenue area, Maplewood Mall, that area. And I think, well, it certainly has a lot of businesses and it's a busy, thriving place. It's I think keeping those areas up, making sure the money's coming in to keep the infrastructure good, making sure it's accessible and safe to some of the people, and certainly that's a constant struggle, I think, for communities, is to make sure that those funds are available. But it is, I think, one of the things I look at is probably around the Maplewood Mall, just making sure that continuing traffic, the community, the safety, making sure those things are in place and it's constantly looked at, kept up, and safe.
Thank you.
And the last one, what do you see as a particular housing need in Maplewood? For example, more or less affordable housing, more or less multifamily housing?
I think every community certainly needs its share of decent, safe, and affordable housing. So I certainly have a passion for the low-income housing area. I think nationwide, there's a crisis with rental housing, and certainly in Minnesota, rental housing is a tight market. It's very expensive for people, and you can't have a community unless you have housing, and not only housing, but affordable and safe and decent housing. So I don't know that I've seen many communities that have too much. I think that's a constant struggle for any city, and you can always use more. So I think both of those things is you need the multifamily developments, you need mixed rate. You want a diverse blended community, and you want that to attract different incomes and to try to keep those different components together and revitalize them as they're needed. But certainly, I think Maplewood, along with most communities, could use more affordable housing and certainly more multifamily housing. And certainly a main focus of that needs to be the rental market to ease up some of those tensions and allow its residents to have money for other things, other necessities other than housing.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. We will be voting tonight, and we will announce the successful candidate at our meeting tonight. If you're not able to stay for our council meeting, then staff will be calling tomorrow during the day.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome to the, yes, if you would please, welcome to our workshop tonight.
Thank you.
Please state your name.
My name is Deidre Jackson.
Welcome to our workshop. We have 5 questions for you tonight. Each council member has one of the questions, and we're going to start off with Council Member Neblett.
Yes.
What do you feel you can bring to the Housing and Economic Development Commission in terms of training, skills, experience, et cetera?
I have 14 years of experience at the Department of Human Services, so I can bring a public service perspective to the council. I also have training in government policies and statutes and rules, so I can also bring that expertise to the table, and just my great personality and smile.
Thank you. Councilmember Juniman?
Thank you, Mayor. What is the extent of your knowledge in public funding opportunities, grants, revolving loan programs, or other funding methods for assisting businesses?
I have extensive background as far as government and working with the Department of Human Services. We contract with a lot of people, a lot of organizations and businesses. So I have that knowledge to bring. It's hard to remember the whole entire question without having it in front of me. So
It's basically funding mechanisms to assist businesses.
So funding mechanisms as far as contracts and grants that may be available to them and how the council could help them
Yep,
fund
funding
their
through
business
grants and loan
ventures.
programs and that type of thing.
Yes, I have experience in that from working with the Department of Human Services. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. How can the city of Maplewood work to better assist existing businesses, attract new businesses, and market the city as a premier business location?
I think the city needs to talk to the residents to find out what they would need. So my answer would be to survey the residents and survey the city to find out what they would like and the needs that they would like met within their city.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Knutson.
Are there any specific locations in Maplewood you'd like to see the city work proactively to encourage redevelopment? And if so, where?
I don't know all the titles for the areas, but I can tell you one area that I believe needs to be developed, and that's right off of McKnight and Highway 36 area. There looks like there's some development. It looks kind of like industrial, and I think that that area could be more of a business area and be more attractive to the city and its residents.
Okay. And the last question is, what do you see as a particular housing need in Maplewood? For example, more or less affordable housing, more or less multifamily housing?
I have been in Minnesota all my life, so I would definitely say more affordable housing. It's a lack within the whole entire state of Minnesota. Well, I'll say within the 7 county metro areas, especially for families who have income in like the gray area, so to speak, or less income. I think Maplewood could help those families have affordable, safe place to live if there was more affordable housing.
Thank you very much. We are going to be voting at the end of our workshop, and then we'll be announcing the successful candidate during our council meeting. You're certainly welcome to stay if you'd like. Otherwise, staff will be calling the candidates tomorrow.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
One more candidate. Good evening and welcome to the Maplewood City Council Workshop. Could you
Yeah,
please
good
state your
evening.
name for us?
Yep, so my first name is Grace and last name is Moore.
Okay. Tonight, we have 5 questions for each candidate, and each council member gets to ask one. So, Councilmember Neblett, do you want to go first?
Thank you, Mayor. Grace, what do you feel you can bring to the Housing and Economic Development Commission in terms of training, skills, experience, et cetera?
So I have about 10 years in housing, mainly with affordable housing with government programs. So mainly with like HUD programs and lots of like Minnesota housing programs, helping mental health residents with experience in homelessness, with ex-felons transitioning out of prison. So I have a lot of experience working like at the front end with them. Plus I have a lot of experience working with the grants and working with developers, working with state agencies that monitor these programs. I also have experience being, working for the city of St. Louis Park, so working collaboratively with all the departments when I work there.
Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you. You sort of started into my question already. What is the extent of your knowledge in public funding opportunities, grants, revolving loan programs, and other funding methods for assisting businesses?
So I don't have too much for businesses. Mainly it's just for Well, for businesses, not like I work for an agency that we're business that we're looking for like grants or for bonds purposes to help with their projects, but that's all I have for businesses. Mainly, it's them building a multifamily complex, a senior building with commercial spaces. So that's the extent of it.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
How can the city of Maplewood work to better assist existing businesses, attract new businesses, and market the city as a premier business location?
I think that we already are a premier business location, so I think that that's not something we have to continue to market. We're kind of like in the heart of everything, and we have lots of like amazing businesses that are here already. I think just maintaining them and making sure that we keep them here and giving like the opportunity for other people to come here that, don't know much about Maplewood or know, the vicinity of where we are, because some people just think we're at the Maplewood Mall, but we're more than beyond that. So when I talk about Maplewood to people, I'm like telling them we are here, 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 and they're like, "That's not Maplewood, that's St. Paul." I'm like, "That's Maplewood." So I think just educating people that we're not just at the Maplewood Mall and telling them that there's different demographics, different things that's happening here, that you don't have to just bring a shopping mall or a hospital. You can bring other things here too. So.
Councilmember Knutson.
Are there any specific locations in Maplewood you would like to see the city work proactively to encourage redevelopment? And if so, where?
I would say the Batter Creek area, because I did live there for a little bit, and I think there's some possibilities around that area that could be redeveloped and could be rebranded, like certain parts of it. So mainly that's the part I think that we need to focus on, because there's a lot of development in the Maplewood area, the Maplewood Mall area already. That's already been up. And then the company I worked for, we built Frost English right off of Frost and English there. So yeah, so I think that going towards that way over there would be more something I would love to see.
Thank you.
The last question is, what do you see as a particular housing need in Maplewood? For example, more or less affordable housing, more or less multifamily housing?
I think like affordable housing isn't just rentals and multifamily. It could be home ownership programs. So we could do more into, renters transitioning into homeowners, because I think that that's the goal for ultimately everyone wants, is to own their own homes. So I think that doing affordable, but doing more like extensive programs that they're just not a renter, that there's, that it's a pathway to get to be a homeowner. So just building that, but working together with other developers and other agencies to be able to have them be homeowners.
Thank you very much. We are going to be voting, and we will announce the successful candidate at our council meeting tonight. You're welcome to stay if you'd like. Otherwise, staff will be calling the candidates tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to adjourn, and we'll reconvene at, let's reconvene at 7:05.